Hello and welcome to what is my first ever track guide on this channel. Now I did do something like this before with my good friend Mike from Sim Racing 604. Back then I just did the driving and he did all the talking. But now this time around I'm gonna do both. So yeah, we're driving on Montreal. As you can see, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. And yeah, I'm just gonna give you, or try and give you a comprehensive tour of everything you should know about how to approach each corner on this track, and yeah, just how to maybe get a decent lap time out of it. So yeah, I did do a decent lap around here. I think it's a 1:11.8 if I remember correctly, and yeah, I thought I'd share with you how I approached it to get that time. Now, a couple of things before we get started here. You're just seeing my warm-up lap right now. Um, I did do this. Of course, this is a modded track, right? It's not something you get with the game itself. This track, so I'll link that in the description below, so you guys can check it out yourselves. I think it's quite an awesome mod, actually. It looks great visually, and it also drives pretty damn well. So yeah, overall pretty decent job they did with this. So I'll put that link down there. And what else? Yeah, we're driving, as you can see, with my good old favorite, the Ferrari F2004. Not the Kunos version, but the ASR version, which to this very day I still prefer it to Assetto Corsa's actual in-game version, but the reasons for that are probably a matter for a different video that I might make actually in the future. I've been thinking about that. So yeah, a couple of things about the track itself first. It's kind of a peculiar one because basically you can sum it up with just two words: straights and chicanes. Because, well, that's basically most of what this track is. A couple of long straights and a lot of chicanes. And not just any normal chicane as well. Not just, like, for example, Monza, where the chicanes are, slow and tight, and second corner is slower than the first one, and you have to go, really, you have to brake all the way down to first gear to get around, and then you have a pretty straightforward exit from them. These ones here are, I'd say, a lot more difficult than that, because most of them are a relatively tight but not super tight first corner, followed by a long sweeping corner which you have to accelerate all the way through, which, yeah, just makes the rear end of the car extremely loose on this track overall. So yeah, we'll get to that when we're there. And another thing is, everything I'm gonna try and make this as general as possible. Like, I'll try and make it so that everything I say is not just doesn't just apply to this particular car, but also, street cars or whatever, GT cars, prototype cars. I'll try and make it as general as possible, as generalized as possible. Because of course I know this is I guess not a very particular car, speaking of F1 cars, but F1 cars in general are very particular cars, so yeah. I'll try and make it as general as possible. But yeah, I'd say let's get started where every proper hot lap starts, and that is, well, I guess with warming up the tires too, but I was actually gonna go a little bit further down here. We're braking for the final chicane, and I'm gonna talk about this one later because in my actual hot lap I took it way better than this. But yeah, we're just trying to get as much speed as possible without actually already ruining the lap that we're getting on. So yeah, we get our exit here, full throttle all the way down the straight. Speed things up a little bit. We're aiming toward that little kink here, And now we're sticking as close as possible to the grass, and we're picking our braking point around 75 meters. Now we do an early turn in here. We're trying to get to the curb, but we don't want to, let's see. We don't want to take the line too much on the inside, because if our wheels actually get, especially our rear wheel gets caught on this curb, it's going to spin us around pretty much immediately, or at least cause some massive oversteer and bouncing of the car, which we don't want that. So we try and keep it precisely on this curb, but not too far in. So yeah. And as you can see on my throttle input, I was on the throttle all the way through here, which is, I know, something I do anyway usually, but here in particular it's actually important because you can carry lots of speed through here while turning, because really what you're aiming for from here on out is this curb, or at least the white line over here. So you don't really need to slow down all that much, because you can basically reduce the radius of this corner a lot by just basically removing all of this track over here from your mind and just focusing on getting to that curb over there. So you can stay on the throttle more than you might actually think initially. Got a tiny bit of oversteer, that's fine. And now turn in for the next one. Just try and somehow stay close. You'll most likely get carried out a little bit. I did as well here. Doesn't really cost you any time. All the time is made through the first corner by staying on the throttle through the first corner. That's where you can gain about 1 to 2 tenths from that just by being aggressive through the first corner. And then the second one is really just a slow turn anyway. You're never going to make up a lot of time through that because it's a first gear corner, no matter how you approach it. So yeah, then accelerating out from that can be quite awkward. I have, of course, traction control in this car, but without it, it can be a bit awkward because it's a slight turn and you're going from a very low speed in a very low gear. But you will have to try to somehow get close to this curb at least, running a little bit wide. That's pretty much the fastest way you can accelerate out of here, because you can use you can use all the track available to you. Then we go around this turn, speed it up a little bit more again, and we're gonna pick our braking point right after the 100-meter point. And now this is a famous one now, isn't it? We're gonna let's just talk about real quick how, like, it's not normal. Normally you don't really get oversteer here under braking. It's not that unstable of a corner. There's not really a banking to it at all. It's just pretty straightforward, actually. You want to try and again hit this curb pretty accurately. Don't go too far. Oh, sorry, I just messed it up there. That gave me a little jump scare there. Okay, you don't want to go too far in again because your wheel might get caught, and it's not horrible here. You can actually go a bit deeper because I feel like the curb here isn't as high, but yeah, try to avoid it. I think, how far did I go in? Yeah, I went right on it. And then you want to be very careful here. You don't want to apply too much throttle because the car here is rather unstable. You're at quite a high speed for a chicane like this, and you're bouncing a lot because, well, you just ran over the curb. So here you want to be careful. I say careful as I'm on full throttle, which I guess seems kind of dumb, but the only reason I can be on full throttle here is because I've actually got quite a high traction control setting. Using, what was it? I think level 2, which, you know, Assetto Corsa is reversed, so out of, was it 10? I think 10 levels of traction control you have on this car, it's level 2, so the second highest. I don't normally like doing that. I normally like having it a lot higher, like around other tracks I keep it at a 6 or a 7 or an 8. For example, Monza, I keep it way higher there, or I should say way lower. But around this track, since you just slide everywhere, out of every corner, and you have so many curbs that unsettle the car under acceleration, it's just the fastest way. I found it to be the fastest way, at least. So yeah, that's why I have quite a lot of traction control here. If you don't have traction control, you need to be very, very careful on applying the throttle here, because going over this curb, there is like a slight bump right about here, where like it just curves downward and back upwards and swoops back upwards, the curb, and that will just throw the rear end of the car right into the air, and you'll lose all kind of traction. So you really want to be careful with your throttle input through here. Also, again, under no circumstances should you catch your inner two wheels on the inside of this curb, because that'll actually just throw you into the wall straight away. If you run out here on the grass a little bit, that'll throw your entire car just straight into the wall here. Now, we try and run as wide as we can again, taking as much speed as possible through the corner. Never mind the, I'd say I just barely avoided exceeding track limits here. It's not like anyone cares, right? Next corner, we just run close to the curb here to get a good radius on this, and with this car, I can keep it quite tight around here and get a good line for the next corner. With a lot of street cars, I haven't actually tested it on GT cars and like LMP stuff. I don't know how much throttle you can actually use through this corner with some of those. Most of F1 cars are, at least every modern F1 car should be full throttle through here though. It's like a no-brainer actually. Okay, next corner coming up. Picking a braking point at around 100 again. And this is the should I say the second? Well, the first chicane isn't all that tricky unless you actually are way too aggressive with it. But this one is the first one where it gets kind of tricky. So you approach this, and it's already kind of awkward because, as you can see, this is like uphill. Should I just get rid of that? I'm gonna get rid of that. Where is it? Laps. There we go. You're in the way. So as you can see here, this is basically unsighted. Like, you can barely see anything if I go here. Yeah, this is, especially since for some reason there's just grass growing over this curb. You can not see at all where this corner leads you. So as you can see here from the outside, this line you have to take in here tightens up really fast and kind of unexpectedly. You have to just kind of learn how to take this corner. So let's just keep it going. Second gear. Now, as you can see, I understeer loads here, but that's actually on purpose. As you saw me just yanking the steering wheel inwards, and that's because I want to avoid, since I brake quite deep into this corner, I want to avoid getting the rear end loose, and the best way to do that without having the rear end, without losing too much speed, is just forcing some understeer, because that'll stabilize the car, and then it won't really go oversteer on you or have a loose rear end under braking. So yeah, aggressive on this curb. You can be quite aggressive on this one even, since it's pretty much level with these inside, what do you even call that, like tarmac? I don't know what to call this, but you know what I mean. This is pretty much level here, so you can ride over this aggressively. I didn't quite get on there, but that's not going to really cost you any time. Then actually no oversteer out of this, which is rare because it can really happen a lot. Here you can take this curb a little bit, but I would be careful because that actually worsens your, like if you take this curb all the way over here, that worsens your radius you have to take out of this corner. So I would actually try and get a rather late entry on the second corner of this. I could have actually, now that I look back at it, probably just stayed in, say inside. Yeah, I mean, like, let's see how to explain this. I could have gone a little bit more to the left here, or try to keep the car a little bit more to the left here, and then try and get a later entry into the next corner, because that's the first really horrible acceleration zone in terms of traction. If you don't have traction control out here, God help you, because this is it's kind of difficult, yeah. So you'll see me get off the curb here and take the entry to this, and I think even with this rather high level of traction control, you'll see, yeah, there you go, car trying to step out, correcting it, and I think it's gonna do it again, yeah, a little bit. It's really unstable out of here. It's just a horrible corner to take, because I say horrible, it's actually quite fun controlling the car out of there, but you lose so much time if you don't get it right, if you don't pick the right line out of here, or just straight up if you just push the throttle a little bit too much, you're a bit too aggressive on it, and you'll have a loose rear end and you'll lose loads of time. Now, you can try and get out on this curb, especially if you took the other curb before, you'd kind of be forced onto this curb because of the way the corner is, and I told you the radius will be worse for you, so you're kind of forced out onto this curb. But if you take it a little bit nicer, you don't really have to go out here at all, which is good, because as you can see, I get on it a little bit and there comes the grass. So the curb is actually basically way too late, way too early at the exit of the corner. You can't really take all that much of that curb and extend the track all that much, because the grass actually starts growing way too soon. Now down the straight, this is pretty straightforward, haha, pun intended, or not. Actually, it's a pretty bad pun, because it's not really a straight, is it? It's a long, super long corner, but yeah. So we're now getting to this sort of famous little bridge, or mini tunnel, where you basically have to pick your braking point right as you get into the shadow. Although, of course, that only applies really to F1 cars, and only really modern ones at that, because everything else is going to have to brake way sooner. Like any sports car, or like, let's say for example something like a LaFerrari would probably have to brake somewhere like 100 meters even before the first 150 meter shield here, sign here, like around here probably, because yeah, bad brakes. So I approached this one a little bit weirdly, I guess, at first glance, because you can see I'm still in the middle of the track and I'm going like completely a different direction from what the track is actually, from the direction the track is actually going. You can see the track is going like this, I'm going like this. The reason for that is that, as you can see over there, everything's basically tarmac, and so that doesn't really affect braking at all, which means if I run out on this a little bit, I can actually get a better radius into this next corner. So as you can see, I'm like half a car width onto this paved part of the circuit or runoff area, and now I have a better radius than if I would have stayed in here and taken like a normal-ish line, I guess. Now this is the second really tricky chicane. What you have to really watch out for here is don't be too aggressive on this first corner. I tried it and it fails every time. The reason being, I guess this is specific for this mod as well, but I think it's actually realistic, quite realistic to the real life counterpart right now, because well, these sausage curbs in here, well, they're not yellow, so I guess that's not super realistic, but um, they don't look all that intimidating, but Jesus Christ, they're so high. They will make it absolutely impossible for you to even take the next corner after that, because they'll just throw you straight on. So you have to be really careful not to actually go too deep on these. I tried it a lot of times, and it really never works. You have to just accept that you have to take a little bit of a wider line through this first one, and then get on the second curb kind of awkwardly. It's kind of the only way the track lets you handle it. So you see me, I go as close to that white curb as possible, but without actually really touching it at all. Now, as you can see, we have a similar story over here. We got the normal curb, and then we got this white, relatively high curb again. And that's actually what we're aiming for. We're kind of just about aiming right at that again. And this one you can actually, if you're brave, you can actually take a little bit of that, because now you're not turning as hard again, and you're not turning as hard anymore. And that means this won't actually throw you away like the other one did. You can actually ride that a little bit. But I'm not sure if I'd actually recommend it, because traction is again going to be a huge issue out of here. And this really doesn't help. I mean, you saw what happened to Lewis Hamilton in free practice when he was too aggressive over this, and he just spun, or not, he didn't spin, he just slid off right into this barrier and smashed all hopes of, well, getting a good free practice, I guess. But yeah, obviously you're not gonna want to take this yellow sausage curb here in any way whatsoever, because that'll just kill you. You'll just wanna ride this one out, and then I'm willing to say I think I exited this a little bit too early. I'm like at quite a steep angle right now towards the wall, so I have to corner a bit harder than I would have liked. So I guess I turned in a bit too late for this, but perfectly you'd be, I think, around half a car's width closer to the inside here, and then you have a better line of exit, and you can accelerate harder because you don't have to turn as much to avoid hitting the wall. Now, why the hell it just went back to slowing down 2 times, I have no idea. Ask the game. What I was actually going to talk about, though, before getting jump scared the second time, is you can see, again, I have quite some traction issues here. You can see my wheel. How many times did I correct? 1, 2, another one, and another one. But that doesn't matter. Doesn't really affect acceleration all that much. Those are tiny, small corrections. But wonderfully, I got perfectly onto the curb here. Pretty much as close to the wall as I'd like to be. And this curb seems like you might be intrigued to say, I don't want to go on here because this just seems stupidly dangerous because it's so close to the wall. Like, surely maximizing the width of the track can't be that helpful. That I'd risk actually hitting the wall for it. But this curb actually is rather steep, so unless you're a complete lunatic and go way too fast out here, it'll just kind of help you in avoiding the wall. It'll just give you a slight nudge back to the inside of the track, so you don't really have to fear this curb all that much. You can be quite aggressive on it even. As you can see, I went on it pretty hard, and I was fine. So now we're accelerating down this, again, not so really straight. Really nothing big happening here, just full throttle all the way, passing the Rolex signs. Now we're approaching the hairpin, and we're going to be really careful with picking our braking point again. It's around, what's that, 130 meters, I'd say, right when we hit that little paved, the end of that little paved part of the circuit out here. Right there, we hit our brakes, and we hit them as hard as we can. And what we kind of want is for the rear end to really go along with us through this. So if you have a car where you can adjust your brake balance, I actually suggest putting it backwards quite a bit. I have it like, was it 50% through this corner specifically? I changed it just for this corner because I really want the back end to roll along with me. I really want it to. I mean, it's not good for the tires, of course, for the tires' longevity. So in a race, I might just avoid doing that. But since this is just a hot lap, that's, I think, as far as I can tell from the at least hundreds of laps I've done so far on this, that's the best way to do it. So you want a loose rear end into here, so when you turn in, and you want to turn in quite early so the rear end can actually get loose into the corner. So when you turn in, the rear end actually sticks around with you, or doesn't stick around with you, actually slides with you, so you can just kind of turn it with that. Now, sadly, I did overshoot this a little bit. You can see I'm starting to run wide, and we're not even at the apex yet. Let me just go outside here. And I did probably lose most of the time overall on this lap out here. Though I'm not even entirely sure how much it is. It might be a tenth that I lost, but it might also be basically nothing. Since the reason being that, let me just if you look at this, I'm able to go really wide now. I did run wide initially, but now I can actually really maximize the track, because halfway through that corner I was basically like, screwed, I'll just floor the throttle right here and see if I can still turn it a little bit harder. Didn't work. Instead, traction control kicked my ass and made me oversteer even harder. Understeer, sorry. But at least that way I could get maximum acceleration out of it. I didn't carry the best amount of speed through it, or I guess I did carry a lot of speed through it, too much in fact, so I didn't get the right line through it. But I did get a pretty damn good exit because I ran as wide as pretty much possible onto the long straight that's ahead of us now. But before we get to that, let me just roll it back a little bit again. Because I actually saw this just now, and it's actually quite nice to see. Screw this up again. You can see how the rear end rolls. You can actually, like, it's actually leaving tire marks here. You can see how the back end just goes along with me, and the entire car turns. Which is just pretty much exactly what you wanted, what I wanted here, or what you want in general here. Just it didn't stick for long enough, so I just had to kind of understeer out of this. But that's fine. I didn't really lose all that much time on here, I think. And another thing, I also have my traction control just for this corner set to level 3 instead of 2. So I have a little bit less interference, and I can just accelerate a little bit harder. And that's also why I thought by flooring the throttle earlier, I could maybe make the rear end lose a little bit of grip and come around to meet me again, but it just didn't work out because it's still too high of a setting for it to actually do that. But yeah, overall I changed 2 settings while going down that other straight. I adjusted my brake balance to the rear, and I adjusted my traction control for maximum acceleration out of the corner. Of course, if you don't have traction control, you only have to do one of those things. But yeah, this again is also quite difficult to do without, or not quite difficult to do, but you have to be quite wary of exiting this corner without traction control, because obviously this is, well, how fast are we going? Let me just check real quick. We're going, I have no idea how fast. I still have no idea how fast. Oh, there we go, 74. Jesus Christ. I completely forgot what the speedo was here. We're going 74, and this is already on the exit. We're like, 64 when we're still at full opposite lock. Full lock. So yeah, this is quite a slow hairpin. It's not quite Monaco levels of slow, but it's one of the slowest corners in the entire F1 calendar. So accelerating out of here, crucial and also quite difficult if you don't have traction control. Now we're getting towards this curve here, which we can take no problem. This is not one of those Assetto Corsa curbs of death that just makes you lose all grip and just spin out straight away. This is a nice curb. This one has exactly as much grip as the rest of the track, and we can maximize our acceleration by taking it, so we do that. Actually, we do that with all the curbs here, because all of them have, none of them are those curbs of death, like, for example, let's see, like you have in, I think Monza is one of the tracks, and Spa as well. Yeah, it's one of those weird things in Assetto Corsa where it's just like, why do the curbs make you spin out like that? But, oh well. Now, this is the most straightforward part of this entire track. We just floor it down here. Let's see what we get up to. Let's just go full speed. We get up to a full 340, I think it's gonna be around 44, maybe 43, when we hit the breaking point. Yeah, 43. And now, this corner right here, or I say corner, this chicane, this is absolutely crucial to get right, because you can have a perfect lap, and then you go balls to the wall, down the straight, and you think to yourself, hell yeah, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be such a good time. And then you're like, I don't want to mess this up. So what you do is you brake too early, and you have to coast into the chicane, and everything is just messed up because you just don't have the right amount of speed for the right line, and you just have to accelerate too hard out of the chicane, so because you didn't carry enough speed through it before, so your back end steps out. And yeah, this corner is 100% about commitment. And the problem with it is, if you do a long hot lap, if you do a hot lap and you get onto this long straight, this is an actual psychological issue that can happen, or at least to me it sometimes happens. This just gives you so much time to think the straight that you start being too careful into this last corner. And let me tell you, you can gain or lose between 0.3 and even half a second, depending on how good the lap overall was, just through this chicane. It is quite horrifying, and at the same time quite fun, because it makes this entire track kind of scary to me, because really you can have such a good lap, and then you approach the last corner and it's just, nope, you don't get that good lap. You just messed it up. You can do it all over again, and you just know that you'll never get it that right again. So yeah, most important part about this corner, this chicane, commitment. You have to be brave on your brakes, which is, at the end of the chicane is the Wall of Champions, and I think that's not a coincidence, because with the amount of commitment you have to have through this corner. Only the best of the best have that much commitment to it, and at the same time, that of course, if you just push it a little bit too far, it's gonna mean you'll end up in the wall over there, and that's why so many of the greats actually ended up there, because they are the ones always pushing to the absolute limits, and not just to 99% of the car's capabilities, but to an actual 100% of the car's capabilities. So that's why all of the greats, Michael Schumacher, Villeneuve, all of them ended up in here. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them, because they're the ones that are truly committed, and that just leads to the tiniest mistake through here, and they're gone. So what do? We pick our breaking point at around 100. I think, is it going to be just before? Just before. Oops. Screwed up there. It's going to be just before 100. And what is this, 105, 110 meters? I used to do it at 130. Like, I used to do it 10 meters, 20 meters earlier. And I was incredibly slow compared to this lap through this chicane. So yeah, commitment. Of course, you have to find your breaking point for every car. It's not going to be the same for every car, obviously, but the commitment is the same for every car. So we brake as hard as we can, and we actually start turning in around the 50-meter mark, I think. Yep. At least the way I do it, because then you can actually kind of use this curb here on the inside to just give you a little bit of a looser rear end, and just bounce you around a little bit, and actually make it easier to get the radius for the next one. Okay. Try and carry just as much speed through here as possible. Just hit that white curb a tiny bit, a tiny bit, and now we just hope that we don't end up in here, in the wall here, and yeah, we're good. Maximizing the track as much as possible. Try and stay away from the grass here as good as possible, because there's a nasty bump that will unsettle the car a lot. Hit it a tiny bit. You saw the ref counter going up and down a bit. And let's just 1 second run this back just one more time, because there's another aspect to this that I forgot to mention until now. You have to be super smooth. Yeah, as I said, you have to be committed as hell, but you must not be aggressive at the same time. You must be smooth through this. You can see my throttle input. I'm trying to level it as much as possible. Don't give the car too much input simultaneously, and just try and keep it smooth all the way through that chicane. And precision and commitment is the most important thing. More than aggressiveness, more than anything else, you just have to be precise through there and committed to the corner. So, that's gonna be pretty much about it. Maximize track and full beans down the straight. Now, as you might notice, this is not the fastest exit I got from that corner, but that's actually not too bad, because this is a hot lap, and we're only going like a relatively short straight to the finish line, and getting the chicane perfectly right is, or at the best possible average speed through here, is actually way more important than getting a perfectly good exit out of this, because we're barely going to be in 7th gear by the time we hit the start finish line. So I'd say probably if you're gonna do a race here, you might want to work on the exit on that corner to get you a better average lap time. But if you just do a 1 lap hot lap on here, just get the chicane right and let the exit be an exit, and just don't think about it too much, because by the time we get here, it's gonna cost you around I'd say 7, 8. I think I have a kind of a measure on that because I did it a couple of times. I usually lost around 7 or 8 thousandths of a second going down the straight, but in return I gained around 2 or 3 tenths on getting the chicane perfectly right. So it's a tiny trade-off, really. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. I'm gonna put the full speed replay after this, so you guys can kind of check that out as well and see everything happening in real time. And yeah, I hope I could maybe help you with that, with getting this track right. And let me know if you enjoyed this. And I might actually end up doing more of this. Maybe I was thinking maybe doing Spa or Austria next, if I do it. And also I was thinking about, as I mentioned earlier, maybe doing a comparison between this, the ASR F2004, and Kunos's F2004. You can let me know if you want to see that as well. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for sticking around till the end. And I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.
What?